I was recently asked about how do you measure return on investment in social media. It's a little bit loaded in that the presumption there, it's a loaded question, that the presumption there is that social media is the main channel that they're marketing their business with, which is fine. And so knowing how to calculate return on investment for that activity is really important. Unfortunately, there isn't a linear answer or a simple answer for that, for how you calculate that. But what I wanted to share with you is in my book, I Just Wanted to Work, is there's actually a section called Calculating Return on Investment. So I've put a lot of thought into consideration to help business owners, managers and marketers understand the best ways to calculate the return on their investment, specifically in relation to the digital and social space. So, in, let's call it the old days, where the traditional media was prolific as far as TV, print, radio, most people would be able to say, okay, well, I put an ad on TV and I saw, the phone started ringing, or I put an ad in the paper, people called up and they read me a code, or they wanted that special, or on the radio, they heard it on the radio and they mentioned that to me when they came in. So that that's how they used to be able to calculate a sense, I guess, of ROI, keeping it really simple, because yes, there were a lot of complicated ways of really understanding the ROI on marketing and advertising spend. The beauty about digital and social is that everything can be measured now, and the numbers typically don't lie. So you get a very good indication of how much traffic's coming, where that's coming from, what actions have they taken. You can measure the conversion. So let's just say you had a Facebook ad or a Google ad that generated X amount of traffic. That out of that traffic, X amount clicked on your campaign, they entered their details, there's a conversion. So you've got a lead that's been generated from that traffic, and if it's cost you X amount of dollars to make all that happen, and you divide how much it cost by how many leads you've received, that gives you a cost per lead, for instance, and then that will give you the first level of return on investment for a lead. The message there is that, and what I talk about in the chapter in particular, is that it actually, calculating ROI actually comes down to the objectives that you set. So, and why that's so important is because if your objective is to drive traffic and you need traffic at volume, and that you don't require them, for instance, the strategy might be you don't require them to part with details, you just simply need volumes of traffic, of interested traffic coming to your site. There's no direct return as far as the sale goes, because it's sitting well above the sale process. It's sitting what we call at the top of the funnel. It's that, let's call it that brand awareness. So brand awareness then has a purpose to either create audience or drive engagement, and then that audience and that engagement gets funneled down eventually into the conversion. So in the book, and what I recommend is that if you don't have a copy of the book, get your hands on it so that you can look at all the different calculations that I've come up with to help you understand those objectives, to understand how they can translate into calculating your return on investment, and then from there being able to use that information to make better strategic decisions for that investment. The other thing that I talk about with return on investment, especially if you're not doing it all yourself and you're engaging somebody in-house or a third party to do that work for you, one of the questions I often come up against is, well, it's going to cost me $500 for you to manage, or for this person to manage something, but then it's also going to cost me in the physical advertising spend to build the campaign and for that campaign to be seen. And there's the question about, do you calculate that entire investment for the return, or do you only calculate the advertising investment? So in my book, I talk about how to do both. And the reason why knowing how to do both is important is because if the cost of both the management and the advertising far exceeds the returns you're getting in total, then that traditionally will become unsustainable. So The other way to look at that, though, is you don't have the skills or resources, and the cost to employ those skills or resources, if you had to bring them in-house, would typically far exceed what you're paying a third party to do for you, who has the expertise, who has the knowledge. You could also argue that calculating that as part of the equation shouldn't be included, because the actual investment is the ad spend, and you're paying, let's say, an overhead to get the resource to drive that ad spend, so to make that ad spend work for you. So there's two ways of looking at it. It's something to consider. It depends on your business model, and it depends on your intentions and your objectives. If leads are an objective, you want to be evaluating that against what other strategies you have for building leads. For instance, we can do a lot of great campaigns that drives a lot of interested parties, but then the work to convert those leads over time into a sale could take a long time. Alternatively, there are business development strategies that you could employ that use digital channels that allow you to get to that conversion a lot quicker, or that warm lead into a sale a lot quicker. So there are so many strategies, so many objectives. There isn't one mathematical calculation that solves it all. You need to understand the scope of your business, the scope of the objectives, what you want to achieve out of those objectives, whether you have the resource internally or whether you need to engage somebody to do it, and then what level of investment is going into physically getting that advertising out there, to then take all of that into account in order to use the best ROI calculation for your business, for your sale, for your products, whatever, or your service, whatever that might be. That's what you want to keep in mind. I hope that helps. Check out the book, because that will give you a really good insight and a bit more thorough detail into how you can best tackle the ROI question.